everybody. Good evening. My name is Alan, and on behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. And when I was riding over here tonight to the studio, I was thinking about, what this show was going to be like tonight and what the guests really represent. And the word that kept coming to me was that they're really Renaissance people, that they're people who really bridge heaven and earth, who really bridge all the barriers of this life. And then they've come to a place where all the love is manifest in every walk of their life. I mean, one of our guests tonight, David Cumes, has written an extraordinary new book, Inner Passages and Outer Journeys, about the spiritual quest and how nature can play an extraordinary role in that. But David is also a practicing physician, he's a surgeon, and yet his real desire in life is to bring that spiritual quest into every moment of his life. And our other guest tonight, who's been on the show numerous times before, is Marilynn. And she's a singer who has two extraordinary albums out, Listen to Your Heart, which is new one. It's a new one, and we're going to have 3 songs from that album out. And her old album, which she sang numerous songs on the last show, is Cause to Celebrate, and they're both doing extraordinarily well, and they're fantastic albums, and the songs from them really are inspiring and uplifting. So I think we're really in for a show tonight where we really have people with us. And the thing I forgot to say about Marilynn is she owns her own electronics company. So we have people that are really in this world, who participate in the world, but their quest is for love, their quest is for truth, and they bring that to their life in every aspect of it. And I think you're going to have a wonderful experience tonight. So as we normally do at this time, please let me lead you in a short meditation, and then we'll get into Marilynn singing, and we'll have some nice talk and some videos from David. So please join me. Thank you. So we're going to start tonight's show with Marilynn singing Listen to Your Heart from her new album of the same name, Listen to Your Heart. Marilynn?
Mind we all will understand. Yes, the mind is key, for it creates all we see. But it's through our heart we love. We learn to pray and feel the peace. It's through our hearts we all connect to God. Listen to your heart. Listen to your heart, and you'll hear what God has planned for you. Listen to your heart, follow where it leads, no matter what. Listen to your heart. God has walked upon this earth, the masters from the start. And when we study what they have to say, all comes down to the heart. Love's the only way, and it's through our hearts we heal. We learn to pray and feel the peace. It's through our hearts we learn to see our life. Love is there alive in us. Sacred flame inside our hearts. Through our hearts it shines. It shines through yours, it shines through mine. Let it shine. just for you. Listen to your heart, follow where it leads, no matter what. Listen to your heart. And the trees, rivers, rocks, stars and seas, everything is made of light and love. It's the universal flower, the source from up above, and it's through our hearts we move it, we direct it and we use it. It's through our hearts we'll rise above the fall. The fall. Listen to your heart, and you'll hear what God has just for you. Listen to your heart, follow where it leads, no matter what. Listen to your heart. No matter what, listen to your heart. You gotta listen, people. Listen to your heart. Listen to your heart. You gotta listen. You gotta listen. You gotta listen. You gotta listen to your heart. You gotta listen, people. Listen, people. To your heart.
Hi, welcome. Thank you, Marilynn. That was wonderful. So here I am with David. Hi, David. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
So when did you start listening to your heart?
About 10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
So how did that happen? I mean, you were going along. You were already a physician by that time, right?
Yeah, I was in practice in Santa Barbara, and I wasn't very happy with my, I guess, what was happening with my heart. And although I was doing okay professionally, I wasn't really connected to my real inner self. So I decided to take a trip to the Kalahari, where I went and spent some time with some Kalahari San, or also called Bushmen. And I stayed there for a few weeks on my own, and this really, I think, made a huge impact on me.
Actually, I think we have a clip of that. Why don't we bring that up and you can
Okay.
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this is actually the beginning. You can see these are the group of people that I was with, and you can see they're quite different to the usual Africans you think of. They're much more almost mongoloid in appearance, with high cheekbones, peppercorn hair. The women are quite exquisite, and they're much more delicate in stature and almost have a copper-colored skin. And their connection to the wilderness is amazing, because these are true hunter-gatherers, one of the few hunter-gatherers left. And these are actually the women who are going off into the veld to forage, and they provide about 60% of the food for the group. And they do everything together. Most of the roots and tubers live about a foot under the ground, because they have to get enough moisture. And the Bushmen are very, very close to the elements. They're very close, as you can see.
And these pictures were pictures you took when you were there?
Yeah, these are videos that I took when I was there. And
you actually lived with them?
Yeah, I did.
And you were alone? I mean, you wasn't with a group or anything like that?
I was completely alone. We went up with a group, but then I stayed behind on my own, and I was there for a couple of weeks on my own. And the thing is that you can see that the affinity for the earth and all the elements, water and also to fire. And there's some very simple way of living.
And this tremendously affected your life. I mean, just being out there with them. I mean, just you grew up in Africa, in South Africa.
That's right.
And you used to be in the woods a lot, but it's kind of like you had to return to that after a certain number of years later.
That's right. I returned with sort of a different awareness, a different consciousness, and it only was after I spent time with the Bushmen that I really started to shift my attention. I'd always done a lot of wilderness trekking in South Africa, but it was much more outward bound, so to speak. But after the Bushmen, I started to realize that there was another way of being in wilderness, and to incorporate not just the goal-oriented type of attitudes that we tend to have, but an inner aspect to being there. And they embrace that by the fact that they need to have so-called left and right brain skills. They need to have the intuitive just as much as the hard skills, intellectual, cognitive stuff to survive.
So interestingly enough, here's someone, a Stanford-trained physician, right? One of the finest schools in the United States, going to the Kalahari to really find himself in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the Bushmen, who didn't go to Stanford or Harvard, their education was a lot less than yours, but they were obviously your teachers in some extraordinary way.
Absolutely. They were far more sophisticated than we are in terms of their social interaction. The interesting thing that struck me is that they embraced all the principles we're used to seeing in mystical people that spend years and years meditating. They live in the moment, they have a lack of judgmental attitudes, they have unconditional love for their kids, a sort of unconditional positive regard for themselves, a very low sense of ego. They're tremendously humble people. And they do this without any esoteric technique, but they do have a spiritual practice, which I believe is their affinity for nature.
For nature, and that prompted you to start that you want to experience this more, and you want to, if possible, lead other people into this experience.
Exactly. I think that if we can emulate their model as much as possible, we can't be hunters and gatherers. It takes years to get that type of knowledge. That we can go into the wilderness with as little between us and wilderness as possible, and the less we have that separates us from nature, the more we start to acknowledge the spiritual benefits of it.
So, and then you formed a group called Inward Bound, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And that basically is outward bound with the other aspect.
Yeah, you need to have the intellectual, cognitive, that they call the hard skills, to survive and not get into danger. But in addition, you need the more intuitive, receptive, almost feminine skills in order to get into the space of what's called whole brain experience. And the book also talked about the other models which go back millennia, which talk about other models of embracing the polarities, left and right, yin yang, sun, moon, and so on.
And how interesting to me, because so many of us in I would call the Western world might not get a chance to go back to Africa except for short periods of time, or the Sinai, or you go to Peru a lot. I mean, how do you bring that back? How do you incorporate that? You still operate on prostates, you still, right? I mean, you still have a practice, you still, people come in, and we talked about this before, and fearful because their health is, and by the time they go see you as a surgeon, there could be a lot of fear there. Absolutely. So how do you bring that love and that oneness and that consciousness of living in the moment, how do you bring that, say, home with you to Santa Barbara?
Yeah, I think it's hard to really vocalize, but I think the more whole I am and the more I tend to balance my own self, then the more it sort of reflects on the patients. So I think these trips that I do are very good for my patients. In fact, my patients often encourage me to get away because they know it helps them.
This is starting to annoy them and your staff.
Yeah, my secretary tells me when to get out.
You're starting to get obnoxious and full of ego again.
Exactly.
You're starting to act like a surgeon.
Yeah, then she tells me it's time to leave.
So she's your booking agent. Exactly. She'll give you the ticket every night.
That's exactly how it works.
So, and you go really all over the world taking these treks in a sense, right?
Well, I've focused more on Southern Africa, especially Peru, and I've done some trips to the Sinai, and I'm starting to do more in the backcountry of California, which is incredible. You don't need to go anywhere, really.
Yeah, in essence. So when you do that, do you find, you were talking to me earlier about that the African experience is one way to describe it is more masculine or more outward bound, although you're trying, whenever you go there, to bring that inward experience. How would you describe that?
Yeah, the thing about Africa is there's so much to learn there. There's so many new things, especially for Americans who go there. There's all these animals, there's bird life, There's just a plethora of stuff out there, and people want to know. There's a so-called getting to know phase. They want to know what it is, what it does, what it eats, how it mates. And people tend to get out of the other aspects of wilderness by focusing their cognitive brain on all these intellectual things that are nice to learn.
So in other words, they have to almost deal with their survival, so they can't really go on to the next step.
The
inner step or something like that.
That too. It's knowledge and information they want to get, and also survival. For many people, they're terrified, absolutely terrified. Whereas there's so much more outside of that we can actually, there's a little bit in one of the clips there.
Well, I think you brought another clip of them making the old-time form of making fire.
Yeah.
So I think if we could show that, that'd be great, and then David could describe it.
Okay. Well, as I was saying, the thing about the affinity for the elements is that they are so close to the elements that they have to be in the present moment. And here they are making a fire in the old-fashioned way. It's a hard male stick and a soft female stick. It requires a lot of downward pressure. It's a tremendous skill. And
you don't operate with these type of tools.
No.
Not in the operating room.
No.
Cottage Hospital wouldn't allow that.
I'm still embracing both polarities. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be here.
Right, exactly.
But you can see it's a fascinating way to make fire. And if you have to make fire this way, you are connected to fire, and they have all sorts of mythology relating to fire and how it came about and so on. So it's very, sorry.
No, it just connects you to what you're doing in essence. It's not something off to the side. It's you're one with it in a sense to make it work.
Absolutely. You have to be totally focused. And this is a great trick, because if you blow too hard, it goes out, and if you blow too soft, it goes out. So this is an absolute art. It looks easy, but it's very difficult. I had not perfected it by the time I left, to tell you the truth.
And now?
But I'm a bit slow.
Have you been practicing?
I haven't been practicing.
So how do you find people respond to these trips?
The people I've taken tend to have incredible trips. Many of them who have done many, many wilderness trips. One woman had been up Everest. Somebody else had been doing wilderness treks all her life. And they said that these trips were palpably different, because essentially I don't do very much. I just get the people out of the way so they can have their own real inner experience. Try and get the intellect out of the way. Try and get the ego out of the way so that they can go inside.
What do you have any specific tools in order to do that, or just let nature and being out in nature and being separate from your habitual way of being and your lifestyle and all that? Let that do it, or do you do any meditation techniques in the process or anything? Yeah,
the big thing, of course, is the nature, the experience. It doesn't matter what you do, if you go out there, you'll get it. The other thing, of course, is I should probably just mention this, one of the other aspects of the Bushman is the incredible clairvoyant abilities. And he's throwing the bones, so that their ability to tune into wilderness at such a level also enables them to tune into their psychic powers incredibly well. The Bushmen are renowned healers, renowned psychics, and they do it, in this particular case, by throwing the bones. They do it other ways, by trance dancing as well. But those bones also embrace the polarities we were talking about.
Right.
But just to go back onto your question, we do use meditation. We do use what's called a council circle, which is very powerful to enable people to share their intimate experiences of the day. And we also use some breath work, breath techniques, occasionally yoga. But probably the most powerful thing is the council circle that we have at least once a day, usually in the evening, where we share in a sort of an open milieu of trust and honesty, and everybody speaking about their own experience, not pointing fingers or anything like that. And you've taken your children with you, right? Yes, frequently. How many children do you have? I've got 4 kids. 4 kids, and they've all been on different trips? They've all been on different trips. And they just, do they get completely blown away? Even though it's no video games, no TV, none of the usual stuff the kids are out here? No, they've been doing it for so many years. Right. They really relate to it, and they love to do it. And it's no problem getting them to come with. So, and what prompted you to write this book? How did you want to get this message out? It actually started with me lecturing and giving talks and slides, and often to physicians, to try and get them tuned into some inner aspects, because everybody relates to nature. So this is a non-threatening, non-denominational way of getting people to look at some mystical beliefs without them saying, hang on a sec, I don't want to look at that.
Right,
You know,
that's
don't talk to me
religious,
about
right,
meditation.
exactly.
This is a panacea for anybody who doesn't want to look at the other stuff. So I started to give lectures, and I gave a lecture once in Durban, South Africa, and a woman journalist came up to me after the show, and she said, you should write this down, you have a book. Yeah, and that's what I did.
And so how long did it take you from the initial Durban to the final? Was it just come right easily out of you?
It came very easy because I had all the information. It only took me 3 months to write the thing.
Really?
But it took me 3 years to get it right.
Right, I
so
understand.
that was the thing.
Yeah, I got a screenplay that's even older than that. That's getting around now.
Yeah.
So, and then there was an interesting story when one of your children were on one of the trips with you about the snake. Remember that story you were saying?
Right.
I think if we have that clip, we can run that now, of the snake clip.
Well, this was up in Zimbabwe, and we'd actually gone onto a friend's farm, and there was a mountain that you saw very briefly.
And the snake is right in the middle there.
It's a python, yeah.
See, there it is.
And before we actually went up this mountain, the fellow who owned the farm said, you're not supposed to go up this mountain. It's a holy mountain to the Shona people, and only the medicine people are allowed to go up this mountain. And when we started to, before we used to set off in the morning, I said to my 2 kids who were with me, you should ask permission from the mountain and the spirits to go up. And they kind of looked at me and said, oh, Dad, you know, give me a break.
Being a weirdo again, right?
And literally within minutes of telling them this, my son and that one fellow with us and Romy both walked
Romy's
over.
your...
The little daughter, where she was little. She's not so little anymore.
Right.
They both walked over this huge python that you
They actually just basically didn't see it.
Didn't see it. They stepped right over it. I don't know how they didn't stand it.
And the pythons are one of the most poisonous snakes.
No, it's not poisonous.
Oh,
it's
a squeezer.
Yeah,
Well,
but
that
it's
would
pretty
be fun, yeah.
It's a pretty big snake. You can't see all of it. Most of it is actually hidden in the grass. It was a pretty long snake.
Right.
And I stood back. I was the last in the group, and I stood back, and I just couldn't believe that they hadn't seen this thing. And then I called them back, and we looked at the python. And then we actually went up the mountain where we saw this interesting thing which looks quite a lot like a Native American medicine wheel. So it clearly was a place of power for the local Shona people. And on the way back, when I was driving back to Harare, I picked up a Shona woman who was hitching on the road, and I asked her, I said, that mountain over there, Genya, tell me about it. Oh, you can't go up that mountain, she said. I said, well, what happens if you go up that mountain?
You had already just gone up.
We'd just gone up. So I said, what happens if you go up that mountain? She said, oh, you'll see lions or snakes or things. So, you know,
There was like a warning there.
There was something there. It was like, you know, it was like the guardian of the place. And fortunately, it could have been ugly, I thought, but I think it was kind to us that day. It might have been something else. It might have been a poisonous snake, and one of them might have gotten bitten. You know?
Right.
So I'm very, very wary of places that are so-called sacred. I make sure that I go in with the right intention.
And the right intention would be, describe that.
Just to ask permission if it is a sacred place, especially to the people that consider it sacred, not to just go barging in like you said earlier, a bull in a china shop.
Right.
And maybe even to make a little offering or something, and just basically to center oneself and just go in with integrity.
With love, integrity, and holiness.
Right.
That's how we try to get guests on the show, but we haven't succeeded. So, and you find that, do you know, if you don't go for a certain amount of time, do you feel yourself almost missing it and like almost not even as a thought, but almost as a hunger, an inner hunger?
It's not only a hunger, but it becomes a necessity. Like at the moment, I'm off to South Africa tomorrow, and I really...
Tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
I really need to go. I mean, I need to go desperately.
And are you going with a group, or is this yourself?
Just myself. I'm going with a few friends. We're going to meet up later and go up to the bush country for about a week. But it's mainly a book promotion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In South Africa?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
As we were talking before, I used to be, speaking of Renaissance people, I used to be a tax lawyer. I guess I still am in some way, but we were talking, well, that's a write-off. So
right, I could write it off.
So you're going to go back into the Kalahari?
No, I don't have time for that. I'm just going to do a little tour for a week, and then I'm going up to what's called Venda, which is the northern part of southern Africa, where there's some extraordinary rock art, some amazing, beautiful country, a lot of game. and some very interesting people who are very, very artistic.
How do you feel about hunting, or hunting over there, or hunting with the indigenous people, or hunting here with big guns, with, big, you can't miss with lasers? What is your feeling on that? I mean, I have mixed feelings about it myself.
Clearly the bushman hunting
that's
survival for them. I think if hunting also is done with the right intention, with integrity and with honor, it can be a very good thing. I think something like bow hunting must be extraordinary, because you really, again, have to be like a bushman, tuned in to get the animal.
Would you say, could you have the right intention and have it as a trophy on the wall with the antlers?
I would doubt that.
That would be a hard call.
Yeah, that would be a hard call. But then again, maybe if you have the animal,
right, what are you going to do with it?
What are you going to do with
it?
I guess, so eat it, and then maybe have it there. But I think just to be cognizant of what one is doing out there, and also obviously not to. Some of the places are hunting endangered species. Well, not endangered, but for very little money. Like you can hunt leopards where I'm going for like $1,000. It's ridiculous.
And they're in like a preserve where they're like...
No, it's a wild area, but you can literally hunt them and pay a fee and kill this beautiful animal.
On the endangered
leopards
species?
Actually are not, but they're very secretive animals. They live up usually in the rocks and the mountains, and they don't. They like the mountain lions here. They don't make a big presence, so that's why they've survived quite well. Yeah.
All right, I guess, maybe it's time for Marilynn's second set. She's going to sing 2 songs for us this time. And one of these is my favorite. See which one you like the best. But one of these songs, every time I hear it, I really get tears in my eyes. So the first one's going to be We Are All Connected. And then the second one is Learning to Love Again. So Marilynn, please take it away.
Every way, my life is changing. My life is changing. I'm coming alive. Every day, every way, my life is changing. I'm starting to see how connected we are. Every day, every way, my love is growing. My love is growing. I'm feeling alive. Every day, every way, my love is growing. My heart grows more open with each passing day. And we're all connected. We're moving through the night. We're all connected. So let our spirit fly. Let it fly. Let our spirit fly. Every day, every sense, changing, transforming. My body is changing. I'm turning to life. Every day, every cell's healing, releasing. My body is changing. I'm turning to life. And we're all connected. We're moving through the night. We're all connected. So let our spirit fly. We're connected. We're moving through the night. We're connected. So let our spirit fly. I'm changing. Yes, I'm changing. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to hear David talk about people who live in harmony, who live in love. For we're all changing. Right now, we're living in an unprecedented time for all of mankind to go back to living in harmony and being in love. This next song means a lot to me. It's called Learning to Love Again, and I hope it'll speak to all of your hearts because it's where we are right now. So here is the song, Learning to Love Again. To all we've mistreated, this song's for you. To our hearts we feel the pain, friend. We are learning to love again. We are learning to be love again. To all who mistreat us, this song's for you. Through our hearts we feel the fear, friends. We're just learning to love again. We are learning to be love again. Take our hands, Spirit's calling. Take our hearts, set us free. Through our hearts, Spirit's calling. This song's for you. Through our hearts we feel the joy. Friends, we are learning to love again. We are learning to be love again. 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 Oh, take our hands, Spirit's calling. Take our hearts, set us free. Through our hearts, Spirit's calling. to all we are oneness. This song's for you. To our hearts we feel the joy, praise. We are learning to love again. We are learning to love again. We are learning to be love again.
Wow, thank you, Marilynn. That was beautiful. Thank you. So we're back with David on the set. So when we were talking earlier about like Africa being a different experience, and also you go to Peru quite often.
Right.
And how do you find that being different?
Well, whereas you mentioned Africa is much more masculine, Peru is much more receptive and more feminine in nature. It's mountainous. It's not just Peru. I guess the Sierras would be similar, maybe, or the Himalayas. But the Andes certainly are. There's something very magical about the energy there. And one can just be there. One doesn't have to worry about what animal it is. There's not much to worry about in terms of survival, although it can be quite tricky sometimes. And that's why, in a way, I've chosen Peru as a better place for the inner journey, because Africa, people become very distracted and concentrating on wildlife, whereas the energy tends to go inwards in Peru. So there is definitely a feminine energy there as opposed to the masculine energy.
Is the weather less harsh so people don't have to worry so much about that particular aspect, or is that not a difference there?
Yeah, it's actually more harsh. Because
in Peru?
Yeah, because
you're higher?
We go up high, we go sometimes as high as 17,000 feet.
Really?
And it can be cold and wet, and it can be very challenging. But in a way, what happens with the weather is it also tends to push you inwards. Whereas the sun and the heat and the animals tend to sort of you out.
Outside. You brought a clip of you leading a tour to Peru, right?
Yes.
And this is pretty high up, I think you were saying. Right? So whenever you're ready to run that, here it is.
Now this particular one, we went up, I think, as high as about 16,000 feet, and we were now camping at about 14,000. And you can see the horses in the background. We essentially have it all set up so people don't put themselves in a survival situation. They have people to take care of the horses carry their gear, and all they have to do really is walk and enjoy. Even in the evening, cooks prepare the food, and they can truly go inwards. And although this isn't the Bushman model, there's a lot of things separating one from wilderness, there's still enough there to really connect with. And this is us actually saddling up, going off for a day's walk. And people love the horses because they don't actually have to watch their feet, and they can really just meditate on the horse. And if they don't want to ride, they can walk. So it's quite a special thing.
So do you advertise these tours in journals and things like that, or just people starting to get to know about it and get in touch with it? Actually, at the end, well, let me give it now. If anybody wants any information about Marilynn's CDs or albums or anything like that, or David's tours or book, please call me at 805-687-2053. I'll try to remember to say it at the end, but it's 805-687-2053. Or check the website out and you get all the information, the 800 number. It's www.heaventooearth.com. So you also talk in your book about archetypes and how these experiences, these wilderness experiences, bring that out and bring that consciousness into being. How would you describe that?
Yeah, well, there are many archetypes in wilderness. There's the Earth Mother archetype, the self archetype, the persona or the ego that comes up often as a shadow, which we see often on trail, the sacred space archetype, and so on. So it's very easy to intimately connect with these, and then in Africa, of course, there are other things that start to come up, signs and metaphors and so on. So if one is receptive to these archetypes and these signs, these metaphors and all these other phenomena, one actually breaks into a completely, in a bigger dimension. There's just so much more going on. In Africa, there's also a very big primeval dimension that people tap into.
So when you talk about that in the book, you also talk about the relationship between like almost all the religions and all the core beliefs of coming from the same root in a sense, and that's what these wilderness journeys bring you to an experience of.
Yeah, that's a good point. A few people have asked me, why do I talk about the yoga system of chakras and the two nadis, the sun and the moon nadi that circulate up the spine? And why do I talk about the tree of life? What's the relevance? The relevance is exactly what you said.
The Kabbalah you talk about in the book, the Jewish Kabbalah?
Right.
Is that the right pronunciation?
Kabbalah. Is the pronunciation. And what happens with those is they're very ancient models which talk about the polarities. I understood them very, very well. In fact, it's far more sophisticated than the left-right brain idea. And if one looks at these ancient models, we can find a core belief, a universal truth, that if we acknowledge that and we take it into wilderness, it even expands the experience more, because wilderness has all the polarities. There's light and dark, and there's freezing cold, and there's hot, and then there's hungry, and there's full, and there's high, and there's low. So one is always balancing these different polarities, and if one balances them correctly, sort of with a minimum impact technique, leave no trace type of thing, it becomes a type of a Zen meditation. So that almost automatically you're in the Kabbalistic tree of life, or you are
you're experiencing
it
right.
directly.
And you wouldn't even know what to call it unless you had a belief system that has but it's the experience of the oneness of bridging heaven and earth.
Exactly. I mean, it says it there, dedicated to the oneness. I mean, that's what happens when you get out there long enough with the right intention. This feeling of we dissolves, and there's this feeling of, the feeling of me, I dissolves.
I mean mine.
And then suddenly we just become we. It just becomes a oneness.
I think we're seeing now, remember that clip you bought with they almost look like crop circles, but what are they?
Yeah, the first one that we saw was actually called the trident or the candelabra, and that's in the southern desert of Peru. And that is very similar to the Kabbalistic tree of life.
That's shown from a helicopter, right?
From a plane,
And what is this one?
Actually, no, that was shown from a boat. And this is shown from a hill. This is actually the way the energy courses up the spine in the Kundalini type of experience.
And what created that in that area?
Well,
that's in Peru, right?
This is, I think, an example of wilderness art. And in many other places, people had rocks to paint on, and here they really didn't. So they took the opportunity to possibly put down their experiences in the sand, either in the form of this ancient tree symbol, which actually is the bridge, it's an archetypal bridge between heaven and earth, which is common to all peoples.
That's how we got the show on there. The Bushman now is showing Bridging Heaven and Earth. It's fantastic. They got a TV just for it. Okay, I guess this is
it again, yeah. And if you ask the archaeologists, they give you all kinds of weird explanations. But if you speak to the shamans, they say it's the polarity, the feminine, the masculine, the yin and the yang. You balance them right, and you go up the middle of the tree, or the candelabra, or trident, or cactus, to the top where you heal. That's the healing model. Right. Now the other figure you can't really see properly, but it's a spiral. Actually, what's called the needle and thread. It's a solid thing with a zigzag going up it. And this is exactly the way the Bushman described energy moving. It courses up the spine and then blows out the top of the head.
Right, that's yoga describes that, and all the
Kundalini.
The Kundalini moving up.
So you see the same thing in the Kalahari as you see in Peru, and the yogis described it in their part of the world.
And you bring that together in the book, is that when you get to that experience, you recognize the experience in all the different belief systems and all the different core beliefs and all that.
Yeah, well, obviously, in our group and in our limited capability, we can't really get to the top very easily. But all spiritual experiences, or what I've called wilderness rapture, are manifestations of energy moving in the system. And it's nice to have a model or a map to know how it moves, because then one can really understand it and validate it, and we don't have to sort of, if you get a funny sensation creeping up the spine, it's not because you're tired. It might actually be this
the
etheric energy
moving
moving
experience.
And it happens. A lot of people have peak experiences. They experience this feeling of oneness, harmony, bliss on trail.
And have you spoken to these people when they take it back into their surgeon worlds and their lawyer worlds and their housewife and corporate worlds, that they carry that with them and that really has changed their lives?
A lot of them have trouble with it. Unfortunately, there's first the so-called re-entry depression, where they really come down and it's like a sense of loss when they come back. And then the incorporation phase that you're talking about is very difficult for many, many people. And for many of them, it just becomes a pleasant, distant memory that...
A vacation, a nice vacation.
But some of them, the ones we encourage people to pursue some kind of spiritual practice, either yoga or meditation, so that they can hold that truth.
It's interesting, but to me, it's like you have to really change the momentum. And if the momentum is, so much from being a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, and you go and have one peak experience, it's just not going to, you have to just slow the momentum down and then kind of change it. And that's what, to me, that's what the spiritual path is in a way, especially for people in the Western world.
Absolutely. It's hard work. It's hard work. And these are very nice, and these experiences are nice because what happens is that they make you feel there is something there that's worth getting to. But coming back to the real world and making it work, that's the challenge.
And you've seen that it is workable in this world, because, in a way, you were a doctor and I was a lawyer, but to me, it is workable in the Western world. Even though we do have lighters and, surgical techniques where we're not using, 2 sticks. If I needed my prostate out, I'd rather you do it with a sharp instrument rather than, hey, I got the 2 sticks. Oh, shit. Get me,
Okay. No, you're right. It can be done. And that's the trick. It's easy to be a mystic in the forest, but to come back and...
I think it's a time for that now. Is that, like Marilynn, she runs an electronics company. It's interesting, in this group of, the 3 people on camera tonight, we have, it's like a perfect family of a doctor, lawyer, and a businesswoman. It's like, we could do the whole thing. And yet the real, aim of our lives, in a way, the real true experience of our lives is that oneness, that love, that dedication, that truth. And it's really amazing, I think.
I agree, and I think the other thing about it, and this is the book, is that wilderness doesn't have to be wilderness. It can be the garden, it can be a walk in the park, it can be watching a sunset. Just
stop to smell the roses.
Exactly.
But actually do it.
Do it.
Do it. And see, but it's so difficult to do in our own lives, because then we go back. That's why, you take somebody out of their life for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and it changes the momentum a little bit. If they smell the rose for, and then they go back to do the next operation, it just doesn't build up the momentum and this, enough to really change a life.
Yeah, that's the problem. Oftentimes we're just basically doing meditation and yoga for survival, just to get some equanimity.
Right.
We really need to sort of simplify and get things a little bit more organized, where we can do these practices and they actually can take us to another level.
Right.
That's difficult to do.
Right. But it's interesting, but to me, it's like that's really what this time is. This is the time of the new millennium that I can really see this happening, because it's interesting for me. I said this on the show before, but I can't begin to tell you how many extraordinary books and tapes and people are coming out of Minnesota and Oregon and Switzerland and write these books. I never heard of you, before a month or so ago, and you wrote this extraordinary book and are this, having wonderful transcendental experiences. Yeah, right. And they're just more and more and more. It's unbelievable to me.
It's very strange. I nearly failed English at school. My mother said I'd never be a writer.
Writing books are going all over the world doing it.
That's strange.
So what has been the response to the book tours and stuff like that?
Well, it's just come out, and it's a little thing at the moment, but wherever I've been, it's been very well received. Locally, it's been very well received in the bookstores. And wherever I've talked about the subject, I've got a slideshow which shows some of the principles that are easy to follow. people really relate to it, because everybody relates to wilderness. Even if they don't go out, they relate to nature. So yeah, it's been well received.
Well, that's fantastic. So is your plan to like continue to run the, these inward journeys, and to write more perhaps, or tour more, or you're going to give up your practice? Because I don't know, I'm getting to the prospect age. I can't have you around for.
No, I'm not going to give up my practice because I enjoy it, but I'll just see which way it takes me. I have another book already. Which,
you do? It's written?
It's written. I'm just trying to get a publisher, which is more general. It's not to do with wilderness. It's just generally on healing, just on the principles of healing. Again, looking at these primal models and seeing what we can learn from them. And the inward bound thing, maybe next year, but this year I'm busy with the books. I don't have time for more than 1 or 2 trips a year. And then I also need, you asked earlier, do I advertise? I don't. I take friends and I like to know the people I go with now. I want it to be a holiday for myself.
You want it to be fun for you?
Yeah.
If it's actually, we've had people on who've led journeys like this, and people go and end up drinking, and it turns into like, oh my God, I'm 17,000 feet here, and these people are lunatics. It's like,
that has happened.
It has happened to you?
We had a couple of like that.
At the beginning,
right? In the beginning, when we used to advertise, we had a few people like that, and now I won't take anybody unless somebody recommends them personally, somebody that I know, because it's too much work. It's not, those are the people I should be taking, but I don't have the energy to take them.
Right.
And I just need to get back to my practice and have some semblance of healing myself on the trip.
So do you find that that every time you go on these trips you get like a little deeper, a little more inner, a little more connected, a little more experience? That in other words, like the way we've been talking, the momentum is really changing for you to be really inwardly connected and bring that back more and more and more?
Yeah, it's very subtle, so I don't notice it, but things are definitely changing. I mean, now I'm sitting here talking to you. I could not even conceive of myself doing this 5 years ago. I couldn't conceive of myself writing a book 5 years ago. It was just never anything I was going to do, so something is happening.
Right, there is a movement.
There's something happening.
Yeah, I've been involved, I don't want to say how many years, because people think I'm 9,000, but I mean, just doing this thing, and it really does evolve, and more and more, and you find yourself lighter and lighter and lighter and more joyful. So, all right, I guess on that note, I guess we're winding our way out, another show, and it's been fantastic, and I just want to, thank you for all watching, and thank you for all the kind letters and the emails we're getting through the internet, and I just definitely want to thank David and Marilynn for coming, and just the joy and the inspiration that they brought with them and that they bring out in the world. And I really feel like that bridging of heaven and earth is starting to happen, that more and more people, you could say, are Renaissance people, are people who live in the material world and function in it and know how to do it, but their heart and their soul and their movement is into love. And they're bringing that love back with them into everything they do, into raising their children, into their surgical procedures, into their electronic businesses. They can't bring it into law. That's why I had to stop doing it. So there are certain limitations. But even lawyers maybe are trying, although it doesn't look like it. So I just wanted to, again, remind everybody who is connected to the internet to please check out the site. You'll see all the guests and how to reach them and links to their site. And it's www.heaventoearth.com. That's heaven to earth, all lowercase and one word. And the 2 is not a 2, but a T-O. So it's heaventoearth.com. So I think you'll love the page. It's got all the crew members on it. We're going to start putting pictures and flyers on it and everything like that. So, please check that out, and thanks again for coming with us tonight. We love you. God bless you. Good night.